Welcome to another episode of Life in 40 Hectares. For our first Farmyard Talks, we are joined by Emily Ashworth from the Farmer's Guardian to discuss Save Britain's Family Farms campaign and her career as a journalist for FG. We will discuss relevant, current topics in British farming, such as food production, land use, policy changes, and the future of British agriculture. So sit back, grab a brew, and let's get into it. Hi, welcome to another episode of Life in 40 Hectares. I'm Heather, the host, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. We are starting our farmyard sessions. These are going to be talks that I'm going to have guests come onto the farm, and we're going to discuss lots of interesting and wonderful topics across the agricultural industry. So today I have a very good friend of mine. Some of you will probably know who she is. Emily from the Farmer's Guardian.
Hello.
Hello. Do you want to give yourself a bit of an intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Emily Ashworth, and I am now the online editor of the Farmer's Guardian magazine. And yeah, I've been there 11 years, so
11 years.
most of my career.
Where does time fly?
I don't know. I don't like it. Let's not talk about time or age.
Duly noted. So throwing straight into the deep end.
Yeah.
How did you first get into reporting in agriculture?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be a writer. I've always been creative. You probably know that from our school days together, but it actually started when I went to Australia with my now husband, and the food scene over there was literally just incredible. But it also came at a time when I was a little bit homesick, so I started a blog.
You did?
I did. My grandma taught me how to cook.
Yes.
And basically cooked my way through my grandma's cookbook. Well, both my grandma's cookbooks, really. They both had their own recipes and sent them to me. And it was a way of connecting back home.
Yeah.
And it just ignited this kind of passion for food that I didn't really know I had. So when I came home, there was an opening at FG for 6 weeks. That's all it was. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And here I am. 11 years later.
11 years later. Flipping
yeah.
heck from 6 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I had a goal and I went for it.
Yeah, which, you know, we should all follow suit, really, if you have a passion. So was there a moment that made you realise this was the industry you wanted to cover? So was it just the food, you know, or was there any other elements?
I don't know, really. I think it was quite organic.
Yeah.
So my dad comes from farming, you know, so I'm not totally removed. It wasn't like an alien industry to me.
No.
You know, I can't say that it was something that I ever planned, you know, to go and do.
Yeah.
But I'm here, and you know, you think about things when you've been somewhere a long time, but I genuinely don't think that there's any kind of other industry that I want to try and report on and help, because you know, everything that's going on now, we can actually make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite a historic period of time that we're living through. Like, you know, we're not going to get these sort of meaty storylines that we're reporting on now. So, yeah.
No. Well, before we get into the absolute nitty-gritty, I just want to touch on the fact that, because going back to your blog and your grandma's, you wrote a book.
I did.
Which is far more intelligent than I am.
I don't know how I did it, Heather, so...
You wrote The Land Army's Lost Women.
I did, yeah.
A collection of stories from women in agriculture.
Yeah. It was based on my grandma, so, and that's something else that I love about this industry, like the generational ties, and you know, this industry is so full of history, and we'll touch on it, you know, when we speak about these issues going on now. But you know, for me, it sounds cliched and it sounds soppy, but you can feel it.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
You yourself are in a farming family, and you can feel it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my grandma on my dad's side, she was meant to go into fashion. She was born and bred in Liverpool, probably never seen a cow in her life. And then in 1944, you know, she was conscripted into the Land Army, and she ended up in Clitheroe, which is just around the corner from here, onto a dairy farm, and she never left.
No.
So she's in farming, you know, for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And I just thought that period of time the women were at the forefront of the industry. They were the ones kind of holding, agriculture up.
Yeah.
And that's, that branch of women in World War II were never ever spoken about. And actually they brought us back from the brink. Food security.
Girl power.
Yeah.
Girl power.
100%.
Yes.
But, they never talked about it.
No, they never talk about women.
No, funnily enough.
We're always behind the scenes making things happen, is what it is,
Yeah.
We don't want to, we don't need the limelight for the glory. So, so obviously, because of your grandma, you've placed a lot of support in women in agriculture because you are a woman in agricultural industry. But also, so you've done all of these things relating to agriculture, but I wanted to ask you just a quick question, speaking as a consumer.
Yeah, okay.
Because, you're a reporter for the industry, you're talking to all these people, but as a consumer, what do you think people misunderstand most about British farming?
So how much time do we have?
You can go on for hours, we'll edit anything out.
Do you know what? It's really difficult, that question.
It is.
Because we'll probably come on to inheritance tax and everything that's happening, but there is support there for the industry.
Yeah.
I don't want to say there isn't, because there is. And I do believe that people kind of go out there looking at what they're eating, but it might come down to, at the end, the price, or it might come down to, there's different factors for different people.
There is, yeah. There's location as well. There's the your bottom line, and we're in hard times. It's not just farming that's struggling. The economy as a whole is struggling, and people have to make conscious efforts about where they're actually placing their hard-earned cash.
Exactly.
So when you're placed with the steak that comes from Argentina and one that comes from Britain, we all probably, I would say the general public would prefer to go for British, but if it's £2-3 dearer, needs must.
Exactly. Just having a little conversation before we started filming this about the conversation around food is a really difficult one to have, because everybody should have access to food. That should be a basic kind of, it's a basic level we should all be able to have.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, another societal kind of discrepancy in terms of how people can afford to live. So it's such a big jigsaw. But I really would like people just to understand kind of the intricacies of farming and how it affects everything else.
Yep.
We are the backbone. Nature, landscape, you go out walking, that doesn't just appear. It's the industry looks after it, so it's so much more than just food. It's a ripple effect, and I think if we could get that across, we potentially have a better chance at actually telling people kind of the impact of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree. So I mean, if you had to sum up the state of British farming in 2025 in one sentence.
We're only in March, Heather.
No, we're only in March, and it feels, But so go on, one sentence. What we're going for?
Sentence or word?
Just one sentence.
How many obstacles can you put in our way?
Isn't that the truth?
How challenging do you want to make it for us to produce food?
Do you want people to starve?
Yeah.
Is a good one, I was thinking.
Yeah. So many.
Yeah, it's feeling just...
It's tough.
It's just non-stop though, you're absolutely right. It's been first we got the autumn budget, and then we got the inheritance tax, and then they started cutting the grants.
Yeah.
Now they're on about the taxes, more taxes for your fertiliser, and then they cut even more of the grants available to farmers, and then the BPS is gone. And
I think it would help if we had some sort of insight into what they were actually thinking, because people can't plan. If you know what you're dealing with, SFI is going, someone point blank said, there's not another scheme coming.
No.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That's not ideal.
But no, but it does
plan.
allow people to then mitigate.
Yeah.
This is not going to happen. I'm going to have to do X, Y, or Z. But you're absolutely right. All of the government, the changes in that lot, especially around, so, you know, as I work as a farm advisor, everything's so airy-fairy. We are looking to deliver this. We are seeking out what funding will be available for 20... What? How are people supposed to adapt and, you know, mitigate for these losses if there's nobody knows what's going on?
And morale is so low. You know, we need to be able to find some tiny shining light that we can actually hold on to, because it will see people through then. Yeah. You know, it's tough as it is anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so we've just listed off a few, but so we are seeing farmers squeezed in every which way direction. And, you know, it's not just policy changes, market pressures, environmental regulations. Hardest question ever. If you have to pinpoint from your being on the ground and talking to farmers, what is the biggest issue do you think farmers are currently facing? Like, out of all of them, because like we're being squeezed in every direction, but is there one particular thing that's really, you know, lowering the momentum of, you know, really getting the industry down as a whole?
I don't know if I can just say just one thing, because right now it feels like such a snowball effect.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a really good podcast last week on FG, which was about, well, it was the EFRA chair, Alistair Carmichael. And he's obviously released this bill where, you know, he wants to get security in the supply chain. And he's not, you know, he's not saying that he wants supermarkets to work for, you know, not for profit, but he wants, you know, if we're going to have food security, we need security in that supply chain, and that means farmers getting a return, a proper return. Yeah. Without that, I don't know how we can move forwards, actually, because, you know, inheritance tax wise, if farmers were paid
a profit
better, then there's gonna be less anger around trying to make them pay more for something else. Like, it's all interlinked, and it's so out of balance. And unless we get that balance back, we can't really fix anything, because, you know, like I say, you know, they're at the core of everything that we're trying to achieve as a society. Net zero, climate change, food security. We're not going to be able to do that without fixing the one thing that's really putting pressure on people, which is those returns.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just shocking that a lot of what I would class as the core public good industries, so NHS, agriculture, you know, police, fire, the things that, and water as well, utilities, the things that people need, they are all under attack.
It's a really weird feeling.
It literally feels like the government has this agenda to just let us go into an Armageddon state.
And if you wind the clock back 6 months or whatever it is to October, it felt like such, because, you know, when all the general election stuff was going on, and you had the Labour government coming out saying X, Y and Z, you know, the one thing that we're not going to do is implement inheritance tax.
Food security is of the utmost importance. We're going to create in the Labour manifesto.
Exactly. We're going to create this thriving rural community. And it just feels like the rug's been pulled from under the industry's feet. And it's hard to get a grasp on anything. And, you know, us as journalists, you know, it's even hard for us to do that, to relay that information, and that's our duty. So, I really do hope that, I mean, the spring statement's coming. I could not tell you what's coming in that at all.
So Rachel's got a calculator working, because flipping heck. It's, I don't know what she's been doing today, but so we'll go into that if we can a little bit more and talk about government support, or should I say their lack of. How have recent policy changes affected farmers? Like, what are they telling you about government support? You know.
So again, it's hard to know where to start. We've obviously launched the campaign, which you can see behind us, Save Britain's Family Farms. We launched that when the budget was announced, because, you know, we know that this industry is one that is kind of, it's at the mercy of everybody and everything else. So actually we need something solid to be able to help people navigate through it. So the feedback that we're having, the conversations that I'm having, they're really quite upsetting.
Yeah.
You know, we were just talking about history a second ago. Generations of families are really terrified, and it's okay for people on the outside to go, well, you should have planned, but actually people were advised
Yeah.
to plan in terms of, you know, wait until you inherit.
Yeah.
Because that was the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So that conversation is not relevant because everything that they were supposed to do. They'd done.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, you know, the feeling kind of, I don't know where we've lost this value of food. The value of food doesn't seem to be there anymore. So for people who are there day in, day out, like yourself, you're on the land, you're producing food, to have that feeling of, somebody else is feeling it too. To feel so disrespected in the job that you love and that you do for the sake of feeding the country.
Yeah.
People are just feeling really, really low.
Yeah.
And we're working on a mental health survey at the minute, which is looking at kind of the industry's feeling before the budget compared to, you know, post-budget.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the kind of the general gist of it, you know, you would get the general gist of it. There's people are feeling much lower, but actually, people are saying, you know, that they do feel quite respected by society, but they do not feel respected by this government. And I think one of the only ways that, you know, we're going to be able to change that and boost people back up is by having people in those priority positions who actually have a real solid understanding of this sector.
So you don't think the government do?
I'm not allowed to say that, but I think there needs to be, like, there's been no consultation.
No.
You know, we've protested
peacefully, very nicely.
I don't know what it's going to take for them to come and just have a conversation to actually hear how this is going to impact people, because, you know, we've already been shown that the numbers aren't right.
They don't add up, for sure. No.
So I don't know what else we can do, because, like I say, this policy in particular is really grinding down on people.
I know when the inheritance tax was obviously released, and you rang me and you was like, what's this going to do for you?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a small farm here.
Yeah.
And I had to buy, as you well know, you know, one of my parents out. And getting the financial support in place for Strata, it took years.
Yeah.
It took me actual years
Yeah.
to secure that. And then now, if I have to find more funding to buy out my dad's share to pay that inheritance tax duty, it's just like, how much more can I get squeezed? I already work 3 jobs.
I think the other thing of that as well is that, you know, like, you know, so we've had conversations in my own family and in our friendship groups around, you know, someone said to me, well, what's the difference? Like, just, this thing gets banded around on social media, just pay your taxes.
Yeah.
And it's so hard not to kind of blow up and say, look, you're not inheriting, like, let's take a standard kind of inheritance journey, for example.
Yeah.
You inherit a house. You're more than likely probably going to sell that house.
Pay capital gains.
Yeah, so you've got money to pay it off. Mm-hmm. Or you've inherited money itself. Like, you know, that fund is sitting there.
Yeah.
Whereas, I don't know how we get this across to the public, but you're inheriting a toolbox to be able to continue to look after this piece of land.
Yeah.
You are not inheriting funds.
Yeah. I think Ollie said it best. What did he say? It's like you inheriting a computer, and then the government cutting half of the computer away and saying, right, use your computer. Like, you've only got half a monitor.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy.
You can't. It just doesn't work. It's not functional. It doesn't. You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of people keep on saying, generically, just pay your tax.
Yeah.
Shut up and pay your tax.
Yeah.
And it's just like I think there's a serious lack of education about agriculture in this country.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
which is It's not good. Right.
Did we go off on one then? Sorry.
We did, but that's fine. Just get it off your chest then. That's what I'm here for. I'm like farmyard agony aunt. But we're still talking in the thick of it. Trade deals, they're also a major concern at the moment, especially post-Brexit.
Yeah.
Do you think farmers are being undercut by cheaper imports? And what is the long-term risk of this?
Yeah, I think it's one of those conversations, isn't it? For me, what I want people to talk about is the fact that, going the way we're going, we're going to have to rely on trade, aren't we? Because if you're going to impose all these policies and these taxes, then we're not going to be able to farm and produce food for this country.
No.
So, which we should be.
Well, the general public should be concerned.
They should be concerned. Yeah.
You just have to look back 2 or 3 years ago when we were in a pandemic. And all of the borders...
Everyone was clapping us.
Yeah, people were clapping for us. They were clapping for the NHS. They were clapping for the farmers. They asked us to produce more food. We delivered.
Farm shop
sales were up because they realised that the shelves were emptying because there was low imports.
Yeah.
We all stepped up. And now it feels a little bit like we've been... Well, that was then, and this is now. But it's a bit like nobody knows what the future holds. And that's why we keep on banging on about food security, because...
Food security is national security. It's literally, you can't put it any other way.
It is. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Literally. If you can't feed a nation, what do you do?
The trade thing, though, is interesting because the part that I don't understand about this is that I'm really worried that people don't understand that food prices will rise. And... if we're going to talk about climate change and the environment, it just doesn't make sense to me that we will be relying on imported food. Of course there's a place for it because it does benefit us as well in terms of, the places that we trade.
Yeah.
But we have to have a solid, secure, food producing base here.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think we were at 60 last time I looked, but that was like back end of last year. And the amount of farms I know that are just saying, right, well, I'll sell it before inheritance tax is a thing and just get out. And
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And, diversifying and just keeping less stock, it's crazy, but...
And then you've got the, I hate to say it, foot and mouth popping up in Europe.
Another crazy thing that's,
we need to be able to be secure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. War in Ukraine, another prime example.
Yeah.
Breadbasket of Europe.
Yeah.
We couldn't get any grain from there.
Yeah.
We still can't really.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do if, some of these, what I would class as like high value product lifelines that we have with international, deals, all it takes is for their economy to do well, their population to go up, and then they need more food for themselves. Do you think they're going to sell it to us if they need it? That is what food security is.
Yeah.
We're literally backing ourselves into a corner of, I'm an environmental advisor and I do plant trees and I do a lot of habitat enhancement and creation and stuff like that. But in the right place, we still need to produce food for the country. There is a balance to be had.
Yeah.
There always has been. But at the moment, it actually even feels worse because it feels like Labour haven't only just got rid of all of their agricultural, benefits. They're hitting the agricultural industry hard, but they're also massively hitting the environmental industry.
Yeah.
I have no tools in my arsenal now to actually help deliver anything, and I work for an environmental charity.
And we can't just grow a
and and then they think they're going to solve all of this by covering more land with houses.
Yeah, it doesn't
add up.
No.
Am I going insane? Somebody please tell me.
It's a conversation we have daily.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, I jumped ahead, but there is a huge debate about sustainability versus profitability.
Yes. Yeah.
Are farmers being given a fair deal when it comes to the environmental schemes and a push for regenerative agriculture in this country?
I think the thing with this, we've talked about using this term before and what it actually means.
Yes.
And I think you've got to have that right before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you said it perfectly back in, well, it was last year when we did a conference, but, you know, farmers are already doing a lot.
Yes.
You know, like you said, many of them are already doing things on their farm that would get that what would have got them something in SFI, for example. So I think whatever comes in next, there can't just be a focus on nature.
There can't be one or the other.
No, it has to be on a farm by farm basis.
Yeah.
And there has to be that balance. But again, going back to that podcast I was talking about last week, you know, like farmers should be paid. This particular person, Alistair Carmichael, was saying that basically, you know, should subsidies even exist anymore, because it's just subsidies for supermarkets.
Yeah.
So farmers should be paid for what they are doing themselves.
Yeah.
Which is food production, nature recovery, landscape management, you know, water management, all those things, because that's essentially their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, absolutely. Yeah. And do you think the grants have? I mean, up until they decided to remove them all without a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Do you think they were delivering on the government's targets, or?
I think it was okay. I think the scheme was okay, because
that's the thing. I think a lot of people saying it was okay.
I think there was probably a bit, you know, like perhaps using it for not entirely the right reasons sometimes. But I've had a few interesting conversations since. You know, I spoke to one particular farmer who said that they didn't enter it because they just felt like they wanted to be able to stand on their own two feet. Now that, you know, it depends how you farm, where you farm. You've got upland farmers, you've got, you know, like it's such a different...
There's a diverse landscape,
yeah.
and every farm is different. Even if you're farming the same thing,
yeah,
so independent.
Exactly.
Every single farm business is so independent because there's just that many factors
yeah.
influencing it. Like
exactly.
you said, generations, landscape, weather
yeah.
conditions, topography, you know, what you can and can't grow.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And then someone else was saying, you know, that herbal lays, the sheep wouldn't touch it.
Yep.
So I think there probably needs to be a bit more support as well around, you know, what you should do for your particular farm and how you can actually make it work for your farm, because then you've got these sort of structures that mould different farm businesses for what they are trying to achieve.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's just, you can't blanket treat.
No, you can't.
This industry, because it doesn't work like that.
No. Farm plans have to be tailor-made to that farm business, the economy, what the function is, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. Oh, flipping heck. So, what's next on my agenda?
There's more?
We're still not into it, so. Talking back to the sustainable, and like, these are things that I, as an advisor, have to try and mitigate, is particularly water quality, soil degradation and climate change. How much of those, you know, particular things, what sort of burden do you think is being placed on farmers compared to other industries? Because, you know, I can speak as a farmer and an advisor. There feels a lot like you need to mitigate your phosphate, you need to mitigate your nitrogen. We've got nitrate vulnerable zones. You have to improve your slurry storage is the new one. You can't use splash plates. There is a lot of more regulation that I think average Joe public actually realise that are pushing farmers to what the government might say is be more environmentally or climate minded.
Yeah.
But do you think this is happening in other industries? You know,
it doesn't. I can't say for sure, but it doesn't feel.
No,
it doesn't feel that way. So I can't say for sure, because you know that I'm not qualified to kind of, you know, divulge about other industries working to kind of mitigate climate change. But it feels that way.
Yeah.
And it feels strange and kind of unproductive just going back to what we were saying before about we are working so hard as an industry to look at our carbon footprint, you know, to use technologies to kind of benefit, you know, productivity and, you know, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Even down to, you know, like farmers kind of matching different breeds to their land because they know that it's going to kind of work more symbiotically. Like, we're doing all this stuff, yet we feel like we're just going to get wiped out by these new policies and we're going to just import food anyway, which will just kind of mitigate the whole thing. So it feels very strange. But I did an interview a while back with somebody who, again, it comes back to that thing about what we put value on. And like, you know, we look at jet setting around the world, like what, I don't quite know what pressure like the aviation industry is under, for example. I mean, it will be work, obviously, you know, there'll be a plan in place, but in terms of where we put that balance, again, that word keeps coming up. Yeah, it does seem to fall a lot on us. And you know, we had the whole, I don't even know how you want to talk about this tonight, so you can just stop it. But like, you know, Bovea and feeding cows this particular feed to mitigate carbon, and it feels like we're always working hard to potentially get nothing out of it.
That you've hit the nail on the head there. Like, absolutely. You know, they just change the goalpost every single day. You know, farmers have to deliver this, and then we seem to deliver it, and they're like, actually, you know, when it's. So just one that I know off the top of my head, because of farm advice, is it's always to do with like slurry management. Yeah. And like, you have to make sure that you have enough slurry storage for like for your MVZs. But then it's no, everybody has to have 6 months of slurry storage. And then there's the argument, now you have to cover all your slurry storage. Yeah. And then it's like, no, now we have to apply precision engineered slurry. You can't. And it's like, when does this train reach the station?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. And I think as well, like, we are. It sounds cringy, doesn't it? But we are part of that solution. Like, I don't know how much else we can do to prove that, because, you know, just on a personal level, like, we spoke again for the first time after a good number of years, and we're both like, I love soil.
Oh, soil.
Soil.
Soil is the most amazing thing, and
But you know, in terms of like livestock as well, like not everybody can, you know, put processing on farm where they can do the same thing and whatever. But I'm very interested in like global systems and speak to a lot of like regen farmers around the world, and you know, do the whole sort of process of the trampling in circles and using these ancient techniques. And like I'm saying, I know that that's not going to feed the world.
I mean, it's not going to feed the world, but like we keep on coming back to this balance to be had. You know, like
exactly.
I think even if we do have to import, because we're growing, you know, population is going up and up, and there's only a finite amount of land, which I think is what other people need to fully appreciate. Yeah. And there are innovations coming through. You know, we've got vertical cropping systems and hydroponics and all of this one and fluffy thing. I think the thing that people are forgetting is it all costs so much money to set up. Infrastructure costs in agriculture are insane. Back to the slurry store. Average slurry store, you know, they were giving out slurry store grants, getting 50% towards a £250,000 place just to store shit. You know, you can understand like borrowing money for where you know, putting a roof over your own head, but putting a roof over where your cow's poo goes. You know, I don't think many people in the general public would, you know, think of that sort of thing. But the infrastructure, the upfront costs, the money you have to find to hit these targets and to deliver things that are steps in the right direction. That's why we all whinge about the lack of support. It's because, you know, it's all well and good. You set as a target and we'll deliver it, but we've got to have some help. We've got to have, there's got to be some help there. You know, and it's all gone. all the funding has dried out on that lot, and yet we still have all of this legislation and all of these sort of legal ties that we have to abide by. Yeah, I mean, I was going to go into soil, but I think that might be.
That's a whole other episode.
It is.
Yeah.
Soil's awesome. I did once make the joke of calling us soil sisters.
I know, yeah.
It didn't land, so we'll move on.
I'll take that.
I
I always think what our teachers must think as well, like we're just sat in here spouting on about poo and soil.
Pardon?
I think they'll love it.
What, at school or teachers? No, they'll be happy. Yeah.
I think they'd be quite proud.
Yeah, we're rocking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, two hot farm girls talking about soil. Whew, sorted.
Never, ever been referred to as that before, but I will take it and I'll run with it.
Take it. Yeah, I think I want to go into more of like talking about the human side of farming.
Yeah.
So we've gone into like the nasty legislation and policy. Yeah. But the farming industry, I say industry, but it's actually a way of life. As we you know, everyone's like, well, it is a business. Yeah, it is a business, but it's still, you are there 24/7, most farmers. So it's still, in my eyes, a way of life. And you just touched on the mental health talks that you were doing. What are the mental health implications at the moment? You know, are we talking about it enough? I feel like it has become more of a thing, but at the same time, I feel a bit unnerved when I open my social media posts because you do hear of people making a decision to escape it. In not the way that we want. And it really does frighten me. And as an advisor, I sometimes go to these farms and I'll be stood talking to them for hours, and part of me is like, oh my God, I've got to get to my next farm, what am I doing? But then this reality hits me that I'm like, I'm probably the only person that this person has spoken to in a few days, if not weeks, if they're in a proper isolated remote part in the uplands. They don't get out much. I think a lot of people still don't realise how rural communities are very socially as well as like technologically isolated. So when you get on the farm, you feel like you're there for hours, but then I'm like, no, I have to be here and I have to stay here until this conversation is done and they've put the world to rights. And they've got off the chest what they need to, because people need to be heard, and we want to be heard. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of panic in the industry. So taking it back to you, are we talking about mental health enough? Is there anything that we can be doing to improve mental health across the agricultural industry?
I think it's really important to. So. Let me start again. I think that we're obviously talking about it more and more, and I think there's also an element of we need to be able to open up and talk about it, but we also we need to just talk to each other, because I think sometimes part of this is like, am I doing this right? It doesn't, the policies obviously. Those changing aren't going to help. They're just going to, spiral people more. But just on a general day-to-day basis, am I doing this right? Could I be doing something better? When actually you talk to someone else who's doing it, and suddenly you feel sort of, oh right, okay, I am on the right track. Or someone just saying to you, oh, why don't you think about doing this way, and it could help you in numerous other ways. Like, we need to be able to talk to each other, which is the beauty of social media. Social media has its downsides, obviously, but the beauty of it is that you can see someone's photograph and they're having an awful day. You are genuinely not on your own. I do think that we need to be really mindful that, this is not a one generation issue. Something that could affect the older generation we tend to, take this inheritance tax stuff, for example.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of older farmers thinking that they don't want to be here so that the next generation don't have to kind of have that burden of
deal with
that,
yeah.
That money to pay back. Whereas, there's also so many things that would affect a young farmer.
Yeah.
So it's across the board, it's multifaceted, and I don't know how we even try and fix something like that. I think we've just got to realise that communication, sharing information, sharing stories is really, really powerful.
Absolutely.
If we take it out of farming, I'm a mother of two wild, feral beings, as well as, having a job and all that other stuff. Like, if I see other people, other families, or other mothers on social media going, today was damn hard because X, Y, Z, I'm like, thank God. Like, I'm not failing, because this is
life,
how it is.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can just connect to people, the better those conversations and easier those conversations will be, because it's the hardest part is saying it in the first place.
Yeah, and I think there's also an added pressure. I don't know whether it's farming still has very traditional ties, and I think that a lot of them traditional ties aren't healthy, in that men don't talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
even women in farming, we're quite hardy. And I know myself, because I've discussed this with Jay, that I don't talk about my feelings. I deal with them myself.
Yeah.
And I process them, and that was my original healthy.
Yeah.
And then it was only when I started actually discussing the awkward stuff, or going and talking about no, actually, I've had a really shit day.
Yeah.
It's been dead cough, or this didn't go right.
Yeah.
Head gasket blew on my lamb. Something. Because there's something that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Instead of just being I'm fine, when we know we're not fine. So getting into
just
the swing of just saying it can actually help you not just release it, but you actually start to feel like you're solving part of the problem, because you're right, well, it's there now.
Yeah.
It's out for everyone to see.
Yeah.
Let's deal with it. And you're absolutely right for the advice side of it, getting that information back, because, like you said, a lot of people are worried about this SFI or the inheritance tax, but then that's the beauty of social media, and why I wanted to do this particular sort of thing in the YouTubes and my videos was that information, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And if one thing that is said today helps one person out there, then I've done my job, and I'm quite happy with that. So you speak to a lot of farmers. Are you happy to share with me and the rest of the community a powerful or a heartbreaking sort of story that you've heard, or somebody's talked to you?
Yeah, sure. That is the privilege of doing what I do. I've always said that it is an absolute privilege for me to be able to, over the past 11 years, meet everybody that I've met, been in their house, the hospitality that I've received, and actually...
Oh, we're friendly. We are a friendly bunch. I know they always say farmers are stood there with shotguns saying, get off my land, but...
once you start talking...
As
you've probably seen.
We'll have a piece of cake and a brew ready for you, so...
I think one of my... I am just going to put it out there. My first ever interview was with my grandma. So that was obviously very, very special to me.
Yeah.
But I would love the family that I'm about to talk about to see this, because I'm still in contact with them now. And it was a hill farmer in Derbyshire, and honestly, it was nothing major or anything like that. It was just this lovely family who invited me into their home. We had pie and peas and gravy, but he cried when he told me about how his family kind of moved from farmhouse to farmhouse, and he saw like roaring fire for the first time, like they had heating in the house, and it was just, I don't know, it was just a really quite moving story, because it just showcased that kind of connection that farmers do have with their home and their land. And I still speak to him now. I still speak to his daughter. They've sent me pictures of him reading my book, and he gets involved in some of our campaigns, and he did this particularly poignant video for me last year for our event 24 Hours in Farming, that it was so short, but it was just bang on. And he was like, you know, keep flying the flag for British agriculture, because, you know, we cannot lose this.
No.
So he's always stuck with me, and his family were just so lovely and willing to share all of their experiences that it was just really quite moving. It's hard to pick, because there's just, like I say, there's so many.
I mean, I think you've sort of just nailed it, because like, yeah, I think asking that question, a lot of people like, well, oh, this big farm, and they'd put all this stuff in, but like I sort of wanted to get to like the who we are as a community.
Yeah.
You know, like, because I know I did joke before, but we're still living in a time, I think, that people have lost.
Yeah.
You know, we work with our families.
Yeah.
There's a community there.
Yeah.
We appreciate the smaller thing. You know, not many farmers are looking for the next newest iPhone and the next fancy holiday. We're seeking like a pint with our mates down po' boy, catch up at, you know.
Yeah.
It was it down road, and
there's no other industry like this, and I'll say that until I'm blue in the face. Like, there is no other place like farming. The people, the sentiment, the passion for what they do, and that intrinsic knowledge of how their little piece of land on this earth works, I think is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's just sad that we are losing farms at an alarming rate right now. Literally going out one a day by, you know, if dispersal sales or anything to go by.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for the country? So, like, these farms keep going out. How does that affect rural communities?
Again, I think it's what we said at the beginning. Like, this is you know, if you're going to drop a pebble into a pond, the ripple effects go so much wider than you could ever imagine. So, you are going to lose rural jobs. Like, that in itself is going to be quite huge. And actually, some research came out that I just saw this morning on a press release before I came. Mm-hmm. I think I can't remember the exact name of the company that did the research, but it's estimated about 200,000 jobs would be lost.
Gosh.
And it just makes me think, like, you know, if you think about the country, and then you think about the kind of the backbone of the countryside running through it, like, rural communities are the cornerstone of this country.
Yeah.
And you take those away, and it will collapse. So it's food security, it's jobs, it's communities, and, you know, on a sentimental level, it's history.
Yeah.
We were so close to our food at one point, and so close to this industry, and if we don't seek to support this industry, then we're going to lose much more than, you know, our supply of food.
Yeah.
So much more.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about, Jay actually asked me a really awkward question not so long since, and he put it to me in black and white, and when I said people should buy British and support local, and he was like, convince me to pay that extra £2 per steak or whatever.
Yeah.
And I really struggled, but then it came to basic economy 101, where I was like, well, when I sell my cow at the auction, I go to the hairdresser in the village, and I spend my money there, and then she takes that money and she goes to the post office, and then and it keeps cash in this area. If there is no farmers in these rural places, there is no rural. There is literally just town and, you know, landscape, and that landscape will go because it's not being maintained. And I can say this as again somebody that works in the environmental sector. It takes farmers who understand and know the land to manage it. If you know, it's all well and good, especially for like these schemes giving you a list of instructions and what dates you have to remove stock, and it does not work like that. That is not how land is managed. Every inch of it is different and it requires different things. Farmers know what they're doing. Let them do it.
I also think that, like, so many people say to me, if I say to them, you know, in an interview, you know, what's the one thing that you want to tell consumers? If there's a consumer right here, right now, what would you tell them? And most of the time they say, I couldn't tell them. Come and see what I do.
You.
Let me show you.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, we've just talked about like the fact that a rural economy is going to collapse. What do you think? What's going through the government's mind? Like, why? I cannot.
You tell me.
I cannot see the end game. It's so confusing to me. But like, surely there's got to be an agenda as to why they would push the agricultural industry out the door. I mean, the general public should be quite frightened, in my opinion. Like, but why do you think they're doing it?
I have to believe, I'm telling myself this, giving myself a pep talk. I genuinely have to believe that they don't understand what they're doing. They must believe that what they are doing is okay.
Yeah.
Let's take the NHS point, for example. Something that I am, on a personal level, hugely passionate about is the connection between kind of what we are, so it sounds so simple when you say it, what we are eating and the health of, you know, society. So they are claiming that this inheritance tax will go towards kind of, you know, boosting the NHS. Right. Well, the fact of the matter is, if we don't provide society with food, then we are never going to even begin to fix the healthcare crisis that we've got going on in this country. So it doesn't make sense. And I just genuinely don't know if they're doing, you know, if we have a dot of a tractor in front of us, I feel like they're going 1, 3, 6, 2, 10, 17.
Yeah.
Like they're just not joining it properly. And until we can form that correctly, we're just going to keep hitting these obstacles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can't remember what the statistic was, but it was something insane that, like, I don't know, 20 to 30% of like ailments present in the NHS could be, you know, extinguished through getting out into nature and putting the right foods into our bodies. And so, like, if that's the solution to a huge amount of, you know, loss from the, you know, of money from the NHS, then surely get people out into nature and support an industry that produces highly regulated, extremely healthy, low processed food that's locally sourced. You're right, there's just a complete disconnect.
There was a fantastic study done. I work with an organisation called Love British Food.
Yeah.
Now they are trying to basically secure kind of supply chains from farms, you know, into schools, into the NHS. So there was a study done, and it was local to us in Blackburn, which is fantastic. And it was they basically trialled a project where they put local seasonal British foods onto the menu. Now, after doing that, they saw patient stays come down by 1.7%. Right, so that's a small-scale project.
Yeah.
Imagine if we rolled that out across society. Imagine if kids had access to good food in schools, patients were fed properly in hospitals. Imagine the result.
It's clear that the government is penny wise, pound foolish. Because when you've got, you know, you've got so many of these reports out there that are just being ignored. I mean, for the Trust, we have a heavy amount of data and evidence to support that people in urban areas that don't have access to green space or like, you know, local food, they just have the corner supermarket. The rates of, you know, disease or infirmity is much higher than people in rural communities. And I don't think that's because, you know, they're breathing in all the fumes or whatever other people might. I feel it's purely down to like our diets. We do eat more locally when we're out here because we know that, and also we've got this beautiful nature around us. I
think it's knowing what to do with it as well, isn't it? Like, I don't know how much, you know, kids are allowed to get hands-on and cook again in schools. Like, my grandma used to come into my primary school and cook with us and, you know, teach us how to do various bits and bobs. I don't know how much of that still goes on, but I think, you know, if we made, again, it's that thing about being able to afford food, but it's also about giving people the power to understand the choices that they're making. And if it was the choice between just tweaking your shopping weekly a little bit, then I think we could probably all make such a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, do you think, I don't know why I'm repeating myself here, but so do you think that consumers are aware enough of the role British farmers play, not just like to food production, but for the economy, the environment, to the country?
It's difficult because I think we need to keep consumers on side.
Absolutely.
And I don't think this whole "you don't understand" narrative is going to do us any good.
No.
And actually, it's not really through any fault of their own, because
no, absolutely, you know, not. No,
we don't have the education there in schools that allows you then to grow alongside the industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, society's changed. So once upon a time, you would go to your bakers, your butchers, your fishmongers, the market for the veg or whatever. So it was hard not to be in contact with people who, you know, were a lot closer to where your food comes from.
Yeah.
I think we're way too removed.
Yeah.
I think the question now is, rather than repeating that line, the question is now, how do we get it back?
Yeah.
Like, we're running a petition, a joint petition at work to get food and farming back onto the curriculum, because without that, we're never going to be able to establish that link again.
No, absolutely. And it does surprise me because, like, there are certain pillars you just need to exist on this planet.
Yeah.
You need clean air, you need clean water,
yeah,
and you need good food.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, everything else is above what it's nice to have. We all want a roof over our heads and a nice cosy bed, but
I'm really fascinated by like other countries. So if you go to, you know, take Europe, for example, France or Spain or Italy, like, if anyone's watching from those countries and I'm wrong, then obviously please tell me. But like, you go there and food, it's so food centric.
Yeah.
Like, it's so family centric. Like, people are going out and they're enjoying food together. You know, people are like, in supermarkets, it's highlighted.
Yeah.
You know, where this has come from. Like, there's a celebration of the people who produce food. And if, you know, it wouldn't take much for some more signs to go in a supermarket that said, I don't know, meet Heather. this is who's produced this.
Yeah.
Some facts underneath. Let's just celebrate it more and like get people excited about it, because, you know, I love people coming to my house and sitting around my table with my kids and, you know, enjoying food together. Like, it's part of who we are. Like, it's human nature.
It goes way, way, way back into history, like breaking bread, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So I feel like we've gone through all the heavy and all the sad. Now we're looking to the future. And if you were to, well, let's just say you get elected next week, Emily, and you're in charge. You're in charge of the shop.
Watch out.
What is the first thing that you'd change? I think what you just said, actually, about education.
Education is huge for me. Like, I've got children of my own, and I love talking to them about food, and I love, because they're sponges, and it works the other way. If they're told something that's anti-farming, then it's really quite hard to
get it out.
To get it back. Yeah. So let's provide them with balanced information. Let's provide them with opportunities to get hands-on with food and cook and see what their own little minds can create. So education would be huge.
Yeah.
But the other thing for me as well is that public procurement side.
Yeah.
Like the whole NHS conversation that we just had, I just think it's so important. Like, we need to be providing the people of this country with food that is going to elevate health. And I just don't, without that being a priority, we can't fix things like the NHS crisis. So that would be huge for me.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and I think, we've all got to look out for each other, and I think that's the power of the people, is that, like what you said, I know we're championing agricultural industry, but there is no industry without the public. And, at the end of the day, you probably hear this, like, we just want to feed you.
Yeah.
We love our food as well. Like, we want you to be as passionate about food as what we are.
Yeah.
Because I love food.
Me too. I'm actually gutted there isn't any right now.
Later. Are there any innovations or success stories that you've been given that give you a little bit of hope in light of everything for the future of British farming?
Oh.
If you feel like everything's just bleak, you can do that. But I would like to,
I'm a positive person.
There are some positives. Yeah.
I think I'm not going to go down the innovation line. Because I think being innovative is just kind of in the industry's nature. Like, we always have to move. We have to move on, and we have to move with whatever the government's telling us to move with, and look at diversification. The things that people are doing there is pretty epic. But I really just like the kind of people who are just trying their best to do that little bit more, both for the consumer and for their own business. So, milk vending machines, things like that. Like, I just think it's a communal thing, so you get that contact with the public. It's giving you added value to your business. I've spoken to so many dairy farmers in particular who, not everybody has the space to create a huge diversification. And, the other question is, should we have to do that to be able to survive? But yeah, those little sort of, I quite like hearing those smaller sort of success stories, because it's actually relatable and it's actually doable. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last question you'll be left to know.
No, I like it. So. I feel like we could just go on and solve a lot of problems.
We could definitely put the world to rights between you and me, and a bottle of wine maybe.
Yeah.
But the final question is a proper look to the future. So 10 years from now, where do you see British agriculture? And are you worried or are you optimistic?
Listen, I'm always going to have optimism, because I believe in the industry. I believe in the people who make it.
Yeah.
I believe in what we're doing in terms of this campaign. I believe in a sustainable industry that's allowed to produce food for the people of this country. So I'm always going to have optimism. I'm not going to say it's not going to be challenging, because, like we were saying before, we just don't know what's coming.
No.
But I think there is enough intelligence, there's enough passion, there's enough thought, there's enough innovation in the industry to be able to tackle whatever may be coming. Because, if we take the inheritance tax stuff, we're not just going to lie down and roll over and say, okay, because it's essentially impossible to do that without losing everything that these people have worked for. So we're not just going to take it lying down.
No.
We're going to find a way around it. We're going to continue to challenge. And I think that's optimism in itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Do you want to do a final plug for the Save Britain's Family Farms campaign?
Always.
Yep.
So Save Britain's Family Farms is a Farmers Guardian-led campaign that was set up after the budget was announced to try and help farming navigate its way through the minefield of inheritance tax. But things keep being thrown at the industry, and this campaign is to basically put our arm around you and try and help you with whatever situation you may be in.
Right, that's wonderful. Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much for being first of many Farmyard Talks. Thank you so much for joining me, Emily.
Thank you for having me. It was really interesting, to be fair.
Yes,
So, yeah,
we are very interesting, so.
We are, more than you know.
And thanks for watching at home. Until next time.